So who knows where this place is? Maddie knows? Somebody said Gent. That's about, well, 60 kilometers or 40 miles off. This is the marble room in the Antwerp Zoo, where back in April 2009, we had a cloud camp. And it was at that cloud camp, Patrick Dubois and I figured out we need to do something about getting developers and operations people in the same room and run a conference for them. And so we did. And we did not have a name for that conference till somewhere... where's John? Is John here? Oh, John couldn't make it. Till somewhere, I think it was June of that year, when John Alsbaugh gave his talk at Velocity, DevOps, 10 deploys a day at Flickr. And that's when Patrick coined the name. And since then, we've been going. We started in Gent with a really small event for about 70 people. The next year, Damon Edwards and John Willis took it to Mountain View. It happened in Sydney, Sao Paulo. The European team basically did Hamburg. Then we did Göteborg, we did Rome. And then things started happening. I think 2012 was the first attempt in New York, which got postponed to January 2013 because of storms. And then things really started moving on. Last year, we had the 10th year anniversary celebration in Ghent. And I recognize a bunch of people who were there, so it was awesome. But that very first year, if you looked at the people who were there, it was a bunch of people who were senior open source people, a bunch of people who had a really big background in everything that was Agile, and people that were starting to experimenting with both public and private clouds. And that is where DevOps was really started. This is a 10-year-old slide I used together with Patrick in a presentation we did in Antwerp at some point in time. And what we coined it back then, it was a global movement to improve the quality of software delivery, delivering open source experience, started in Ghent in 2009. And the whole theme of that talk was vampires and werewolves, but it kind of still is that bloody. So, where are we today? Today, this is what DevOps Days look like. Last year, we had 70 events worldwide. We had 250 events already happen before. If we look at the DevOps Days Slack, there is 900 people all over the world organizing this kind of events. And then there's even other events who have an additional DevOps track. So this thing really has caught on. It really is something that is happening all over the place, right? So who am I? I'm Kris. I used to be a developer, and then I became an operations person because I was the only one who knew how to rack a machine and how to cluster something. On a day-to-day basis, I try to help people to leverage open source to deliver value. And I do that for a boutique consultancy called Inuits. Mostly when people run into DNS problem, they curse at me because that's the title of my blog, and it has been like that for over 15 years. And next to DevOps Days, I run a bunch of other conferences. And why is all of this important? It's because this is about the history. This is about how did we get here and where do we come from. And yeah, I am a grumpy old... Oh, wait, what am I? Developer, sysadmin? I'm definitely opinionating. I know how things hurt. I've been on call for way too many years, and I managed to get it down to close to 0 incidents. But also because we know that history repeats. We know that things will happen again if we don't learn from our mistakes. So what is the actual problem? These are the old days, like Friday evening, 5 p.m., Somebody walks into your office like, here's a tarball, can you put this in production now? And you go like, but what dependencies? I don't have machines to put this on. What database are you going to use? What about security? What about high availability? What about scalability? And most importantly, my computer cannot install this. How do I even do this? And there's a huge gap between the people who built this piece of software and the people who need to manage this. And I say the old days because the 5 o'clock issue on a Friday evening was the things I had to deal with back in the early 2000s when I was working for a telco manufacturer. And they literally came into my office like, hey, we're going live on national radio at 6. Here's a tarball, can you deploy this? But it's still day-to-day business for a lot of organizations. And Devopsdays started to try to get that changed. But Devopsdays itself had changed. And if you look at where the discussions we had and where the things we care about have evolved, the best place for me to look at is at the open spaces of Devopsdays. And it's come to a point where I can pretty much predict what the topics are going to be. And I'm going to go over a bunch of those, and you'll notice that there are slides in here about open spaces that happened yesterday. And those slides were not from yesterday. So if we take that step back, a lot of the discussions initially, so we get the left side and the right side. And I haven't even said something when people are laughing, so yeah, okay. The early days, we were talking about how do you, from an operational point of view, introduce things like Agile and Kanban and Lean. And today, we're trying to teach people that the scaled Agile framework is not Agile, that there's other things next to Scrum, that it has changed. 10 years ago, we had startups as examples. And honestly, it's been a really long time since I had a good success story on our Devopsdays from an organization that really made change. I'm not hearing those stories anymore. Why? We had success stories, and now we have sometimes talks about anti-patterns that got really popular. We had the unicorns, and now we have talks about failure and burnout. If you look at it on a more technical level, 10 years ago, we were talking about Sieve Engine and Puppet and Chef and doing infrastructure as code and automate everything. And today, we're talking about YAML. Who likes YAML? Was there the same 3 hands as yesterday? I think yesterday there were 4 people, so somebody changed their mind. We were talking about orchestration tools like mCollective and Noah and Rundeck, and well, now it's Ansible, and maybe a bit of Rundeck and some other things. But there's also good evolutions. We were talking about Jenkins and Hudson, and that was it. And now there's a huge variety. There's still Jenkins, there's Jenkins X, there's GitLab CI, Circle CI, Travis CI, and there's a variety of new open source tools that are doing this. And we do pipeline as code. We don't click around anymore. At least I hope you do. But on the other side, we do kube apply -f to include a bunch of YAML files. Or we do Helm install. And we have, to deploy a stack, we have a 50-line shell script that does a bunch of things, rather than actually doing infrastructure as code. So that's definitely not good. We went from discussing continuous delivery and continuous deployment to realizing that nobody's actually doing this. 10 years ago, we were telling people, hey, there's this new version control thing. Well, not really new, but move to Git, use Git, because Subversion was still a really big thing. And people were focusing on, hey, we need to do this Git flow thing. And a bunch of us were looking at it like, what? Why do you want to make things ridiculously complex? We were just discussing release management and topics like that. And now when we talk about these things, it's like, what if we finally start doing this? What about we finally start doing continuous delivery? Stop branching. Do trunk-based development. Don't lie to yourself that if you have a zillion branches which you never merge, you're doing continuous integration. You're not. You're doing continuous disintegration. So, culture, automation, and monitoring. 10 years ago, we had bloated commercial software. We had Nagios, which nobody liked, which was a really hostile community. We had things like Cacti and Union and RRD. Who still remembers those? Who still loves those? We had Xenos, and when we were talking about the newer platforms like Zabbix, the main problem we had was, how do we scale this? I mean, if I have to have 15 nodes to monitor and I need a full-time DBA to actually set this up and manage a database, obviously John Vincent tweeted, monitoring sucks, back in 2000. What was it, 11? Because we hated the way monitoring was set up. Fast forward a couple of years, and we have a whole ecosystem of completely new tools. We have the Elk stack, we have Prometheus, we have Graphite, Grafana, we have a newfound law for monitoring. At Devopsdays Rome in 2012, Ulf Manson gave a talk with the pictures and the images all drawn by his kids. And there were hearts. And he was talking about how he had refound his love for monitoring. It was about Sensu, but it was not about Sensu. It was about the fact that he automated everything, and everything was working out of the box. And it was in sync with reality. And he was improving on not having false positives anymore. And he was in love again with monitoring. And that's where we want to end up. That's where we want to be. But no, now we need to discuss about, hey, this monitoring thing is not good enough, you have to have observability. Well, maybe some people don't need to go there yet. Maybe they still need to have time. So, monitoring has improved. We've improved culture in there. One of the other topics we were discussing at the very first DevOps days definitely was, how do we deal with this cloud thing? And there was a huge difference between what was happening in the Valley and I think most of America as opposed to what was happening in Europe, because somewhere up till 5 to 6 years ago, I could basically ask a question in Europe like, who's using AWS? And if you saw all the hands raised, it was that those are the Americans in the room. And that was actually the truth, because nobody in Europe was using it. We were still largely on-prem. We were doing KVM, Xen, all of those things. We were doing Vagrant. We were discussing Linux HA and CoreSync and how to do resilient, no, not resilient, how to do high available things, how to build clusters that really scaled. We were discussing file systems, like how does Ceph compare to Gluster, and why is DRBD not going to help us? And the very first DevOps days, we were actually making a comparison study, a matrix of what of the open source cloud implementations actually have similar features to what the public cloud is providing us. Which of these tools is still around? OpenStack is the only one still around. Well, kinda. What are we talking about now? Docker. And how painful Docker is. I mean, just last week I managed to have a fresh Docker install which just crashed when you ran the hello world. This is not the level of stability I went to the open source world for. Well, they rebranded to Moby. Wow. And there's new stuff happening there, like Cryo and Podman. It's going to be better. But now we're doing talks about Mesos and Cube. How are those different? And the file system we really love now is NFS. You know what NFS stands for? Anybody? Network failure system. No file system. Need for speed. I lost track, but one of the NFS maintainers back at some Linux conference in Germany actually had a full deck, and every title was one of those acronyms. So we're down here. Everybody is using Docker and thinking that Docker is doing DevOps. So you're doing Docker, so you're doing DevOps. No. Tools are not going to fix our broken culture. I'm not sure if it was Bridget who said that first or somebody else, but so many people have been saying this. Tools are absolutely not going to fix our broken culture, and the tooling hype is not going to fix that. Kube is not going to fix your problems. Absolutely not. But people still jump on it. And now you're not doing DevOps if you're not doing Kube. And this is one of our biggest challenges. Going to a vendor, buying a tool is easy. Changing the culture of your organization, not easy. Maybe not even possible. So how did we end up here? Well, I think our industry is really good at killing awesome ideas. Who loves Agile? Nobody. Why don't you love it? Because you had to work with somebody who was putting rigid rules which made no sense on your workload, rather than actually looking at the library and taking a bunch of really good best practices and implementing them the way they should be. I mean, Agile is about reducing risk up front. It's not the way implemented it should be. But if you look at what they meant, what they wanted to do, and if you learn the language and actually automated everything and made that 10 times faster, Agile is really great. But the way it's been implementing by a manual process, by people who basically made it a religion and said you should do these, and these steps, that's what killed it. Is Agile dead? The number of people that have never seen Agile but claim to be Agile evangelists is probably higher than the people who actually understand Agile. Specifically, if they start doing things like the scaled Agile framework. There's recordings from Martin Fowler giving a really good explanation of what it really stands for. Google it, I'm not going to tell it. But the problem is that most people have never seen what Agile is about. They've seen people using Jira and stand-ups, but have never seen teams having autonomy to decide and to figure out what they should build and when they should build it, how. So they've got kind of stand-ups and a bit of agility, but not really. They got somewhere in between waterfall and whatever. And if you look at it, Scaled Agile framework is really good if you consider it as a waterfall methodology. So who killed DevOps? We all did. I mean, I did. For years, I've been traveling the world giving a talk called 7 Tools for Your DevOps Stack. And the punchline of that old talk was, it is about the humans, but everybody remembered those 6 other tools that I was talking about. They remembered Vagrant, they remembered Graphite, they remembered Puppet. They forgot the important part. We spent years discussing Puppet versus Chef versus Ansible versus whatever. What we actually should have been doing is, doesn't matter, use a tool, whichever. And we've even had people who were marketing like, Docker is the ultimate DevOps tool. What? And then there's our good friends, the recruiters. Who's a DevOps engineer? Who's proud of it? Is it a job title? Is it like, what are you? Are you a developer? Are you an ops engineer? Are you a Java developer who puts things in production? I don't know. Ken found this tweet, like, 0 salary. That's the best one. Pictures taken upstairs. You folks are still hiring for DevOps engineers. I don't know what you plan on finding. DevOps teams, like, is it a team running tooling? Is it a team in charge of delivery? It's another silo in between. Or even DevOps certification. Who's certified in DevOps? By whom? Like, 50th anniversary, we made a joke of it. We certified every single visitor by the Department of Dev and Oops. The Berlin folks made it better. They let everybody come back each year to Devopsdays to get recertified. So certification has been killing a lot of things. They miss the goal, they make it a procedure, and it's typically vendors just milking end users, because that's what vendors do. People will keep figuring out new definitions until they find one they like. And that's not good. So, yeah. Enterprise DevOps. This is the really hard one, because there's fundamentally nothing different. Whether it's a large organization or a big one, it's just going to take much longer. Because there's more people to convince, there's more people that are going to resist, and larger organizations, eventually you're going to bump into a wall where the antibodies kick in and you're not going to be able to move forward. So the sad truth is that most large enterprises aren't even close. They keep promising their management they're close. And every layer up, they're going to say they're closer and closer. And what they're actually doing is pushing people straight into burnout. So where are we 10 years later? Like, literally the same questions I had 15 years ago. Like, I don't have machines to deploy this on. No, now we're basically at works in my container ops problem. The sad part is I literally had this 3 years ago, 4 years ago, the day after I keynoted Mesoscon, coming back to the office and there was something, here's a container, you can put this in production. Like, it didn't even work. Not even on the developer's machine. So what have we really learned? I don't think we learned a lot. We've been running in circles, and we're still running in circles. And the rise of all of these things, like all the cargo culting, all the resume-driven development, all the hype-driven development, is not helping us. And YOLO Ops is a really one I like. Specifically driven by vulture capitalists who have the only goal is to exit within the first 18 months. So who cares about having a stable platform as long as it looks nice? It's not helping us. We also learned that change management is really hard. You're going to have those first 20 people who go like, hey, this is awesome, we're going to do this, and then we're going to have pain. We also learned that a bunch of the success stories are not success stories. They're a story about a really small part of the organization who's doing great stuff, but it's definitely not company-wide. And there's a long, long, long journey ahead for us, where we are nowhere close to be finished. And we're going to need to tell new organizations that they need to relearn, and new people on board, and that's a real challenge, while we're having new technologies we need to embrace. And this is our biggest challenge, teaching people the mistakes we made before so they don't shoot themselves in the foot anymore. So our role for today is this. We need to be teachers, students, and everything, bridge builders, developers, trouble seekers, and troubleshooters, all at once. And that's the only way we can do this. That's the only way we can move forward. And maybe then more and more people will understand what we learned. Because it is not about the tools. It is about changing organizations and working together. It is about people. And putting on your new fancy whatever is going to pop up after Kubernetes is not going to fix our problems. And that's all I have for you today.
Yeah, it was very interesting, everything you had to say. Where do you see the ITIL, the change management, and the saying no? Do you see this going into an automated way where there is a person saying no, or is it going to be a result of the automated testing and so forth?
This is basically part of your automated testing. Infrastructure as code, your policy as code, and everything is written in code. And if you have code reviews in place, then there's no security person who needs to go in and have a discussion like, hey, this isn't secure, but it's already defined way, way, way earlier in the process. It is about automating all of those things. Any other questions?
Are there any more questions? Okay, great. Thank you very much, Kris.